Look in the dirt means when you're leaning in your go-kart and you're almost touching your head on the ground.
Do we want it to be not dusty? Yes.
Funky.
Look at his hands!
Bumping, spin them out.
It's an Ohio race here with Chris Schneider.
My bad. Good run. No meat. Steady hand.
Must get the win, must get the win.
Welcome back to the Lickin the Dirt podcast. I'm Chase Grimm, joined by my co-host Jake Whitling. Episode 7 today. Have a very special guest coming on here in a minute, but just want to touch on a few things first here. We have a little bit of a change going on. We are changing up our episode a little bit. We are now going to be releasing episodes on Thursdays, tentatively, instead of Fridays, evenings. With Jake getting out of school, being home more often, going to be easier for us to film throughout the week. I think it'll be easier for people to watch earlier in the week too. So just going to try that change out and see how that goes.
And there's some other things with that as well. If we're going to do the recap videos and stuff, by the time we release an episode on Friday, the stuff that we had talked about in the recap episode is basically old news. So, we're changing that up a little bit. And viewers of the show, definitely leave some feedback with, what you think maybe we should do with our releases and stuff. We can certainly try different things. Keep in mind, this is still episode 7, so we're still pretty new to this, but we're kind of playing it by ear. But why don't you go ahead, Chase, and introduce our guest?
Our guest is none other than the Seneca slider, Bobby Whitling.
And here he is, right here.
In here. There he is.
Hey, boys.
Well, I didn't think it would take very long to get you on here, so we're pretty excited to have you.
Yeah, I've been watching these podcasts and some of the other guests. It's been real good. I knew I had to get on here sometime, so what a better time than episode 7.
As a viewer of the show, what do you think? How do you think we're doing so far?
I think you're doing good. The guests so far have been interesting to listen to. So you just got to keep doing it, and as you do it more, I think you guys will get more accustomed, and I think it'll just keep getting better. Yeah.
Well, we've got a bunch of questions for you. Of course, we're probably not gonna ask all of them, but Chase, why don't you go ahead and get us started with our first question?
We'll kick it off with kind of the question we kind of kick off everybody with, and that's, how did you get started into racing, Bobby?
Well, right around 1989 or so, I was still in high school, and I had a friend of mine that lived out in Venus, a couple friends actually, Joe Culp and Brian Hartzell. Well, Joe's mom, Elsie Culp, who had recently passed away, she was into racing at Knox, and me and Joe and Brian would go to the races with her to help her down Knox. Well, it was maybe a year later or so, a couple years later, Joe and Brian Hartzell went together on a car, and what they would do is they would alternate racing it every other week, So it was Joe's turn to race the car one week, and he asked me if I wanted to run hot laps. And I'm like, heck yeah. I had a Firebird at the time, and I was always flying around the dirt roads down in Venus and Fertix area, you know. And yeah, this would be cool. So I did the hot laps, and I come back in the pits, and Joe was all happy, and he's like, "I'm just gonna have you run the heat race," and I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I went out and ran the heat race. I don't remember how we did. You know, we were, you know, they were undercard back then, but so that's how I actually got started. And I think the next year I was hooked already. So I had Robbie Blair start to build me a car. And I raced a complete season in 1993 at Sportsman Speedway in the Super Stock division, which is a lot like the Penn Ohio Pro Stocks right now. I mean, there was no you know, your suspension stuff was pretty much the same. And that back then, the late model bodies weren't like they are now. So, but there wasn't a lot of rules in it other than there wasn't even a tire roll. And the motors were open and, you know, no aluminum heads. But so I raced that season in 1993. And then after the season, I ended up getting into an accident at work at the time. And so I got my hand crushed, and that took me out of the whole 1994 season, except for the very end of the season. I think I got out maybe twice. But, and then from 94 on, that from the end of 94 on, I've been racing steady.
Wow. So it basically took you like, because you said that you didn't even get really full time until 93. So even after your accident, it took you a while even to get full time and get steady. Huh.
Yeah. Like I said, I started right away in the super stock division, raced that whole 93 season. And then I had to sit out pretty much all 94. And then right at the end of the season in 94, I got out. So, but I pretty much missed that whole summer.
Yeah. Now you said that you had hot lapped that car. What kind of car was it? I don't know if I didn't hear if you had said it, but
yeah, it was what the heck was that? It was a bigger car. It was a super stock, but it was a Chevelle or a bigger Chevelle or something like that. It was a big car. Yeah, can't really remember.
I see. And another thing I kind of wanted to ask too, back then, you know, you mentioned that, you know, you briefly stated something about tires. What kind of tires were on a lot of the race cars then? You know, was it Hoosier or was it, you know, different stuff or?
Back then, you would see Mercury tires. There was a lot of them. And I even want to say Goodyear. I'm not sure. Like, I want to say there was Hoosiers back in the early 90s, but I can't remember. I mean, we would buy used tires off of sprint car teams and run their front tires and whatever we could get, you know. But then as it progressed, you know, in the 94, 95, yeah, Hoosier and McCurry ended up switching over. I think they're American Racer now is what they are. And so you basically had through the mid-90s American Racer and Hoosier.
I said, how much was a tire back then?
No, man. A lot of the stuff we were on back then was small tires, and I can remember buying a tire for like $87
Oh, sweet.
for a small tire. I
Yeah.
can remember race fuel at Knox when I started was $2.75 a gallon.
Dang. Well, I'll get to my first question. Kind of piggybacking off of you know, the start of your career and stuff. Did you have a mentor when you started getting into racing?
Yeah. Robbie Blair was who I Robbie built my first car for me, and we used to go up to Rob's on. We used to go up there on Friday nights, me and Joe, or me and Brian, or else he would go up and just BS with him, and Rob would be working on his car or whatever, and I just found it fascinating to watch and learn, and so and Robbie was very good, and so he's one I always looked up to get into racing, and Robbie has helped me out tremendously through the years. So he's was my first mentor, and then later on when I got going, I would say towards the later part of the 90s, like 97, I met a guy named Bobby Powell. He was a friend of Robbie's and raced with Robbie some, in the earlier days. And me and Bobby palled up. We turned into pretty good friends, and he's the one that basically drilled it in my head of how I should be driving, and made me understand it, and it sort of turned my career around. And like in '98, I won some races, and then it just escalated from there.
I see. Well, Chase,
That was
what do you-
actually kind of one of my questions was, what is kind of one thing that you think that you kind of do differently than everybody else that kind of has set you apart and made you more successful than other drivers?
Well, the big thing as far as the driving aspect, back then we were on small tires, the 8-inch stuff. So do not spin your tires coming off the corner, no matter what it takes. So you may not be in the gas the whole way down the straightaway. You may not be in it full bore until you're past the flagman. And I did that so many times with them. I mean, I used to detune my carburetor so the 4 balls wouldn't open up until late. But I could get in the gas way more because I was in my 2-burrow longer. And that won me so many races on the slick back in the day with small tires. Other than that, I would say just garage prep. I mean, I was constantly, when I was young, wanting to learn about race cars and how they worked. I can remember, back then we didn't have YouTube videos and Facebook and all this. So, we'd buy books from Speedway or whatever. I can remember Steve Smith, stock car racing, advanced stock car racing. I used to get all these books, and I used to read them and study them, and try to take that stuff, out to my car and apply it. So I'd say pretty much just the want to learn, and then listening to the people I looked up to, listening to their advice.
So before we get, we have some questions, that start to get a little bit more down the line in your career. But before we get too far, I have some questions more based off the earlier side of your career. So, when you were talking about getting started, you mentioned the super stock division. When you did get started, was it set in your mind that you wanted to race a stock car, or did you consider doing anything else early? Or
Well, I graduated high school in 1991, and I started in, say, like 93, 94. So I didn't have a lot of resources. So the resources that I did have for my job, I put into that stock car, because back, from the people I was around, that's what they raced. So that's what I wanted to do. Now, as I progressed, as I went to the mid to the later 90s, I wanted to be in a super late model so bad. I mean, that was my main goal. But I would only do it if I could be competitive. I wasn't going to go out there half-assed and, be a mid-pack car. There's no way I was going to do that. So I was always waiting for an opportunity, but I really never got one. So I was content with what I did, and we made some switches. We ran an E mod for a year, and then we ran the crate late model division for probably 5 years. Brad came on, and around 2006, 2007, and he got real interested in it, and so we did that, and now we're back in the stock, pro stock.
Yeah. And another question, kind of to go off of, like I said before, the early part of your career, we know that you mentioned Knox as where you hot lapped. That's kind of where you got started. Was Knox absolutely the track for you that you would say you carved your teeth in racing at?
Absolutely. Yeah. I raced down at Knox, until they pretty much they took a break there for a while, I think. But then when Tri-City opened up in 97, it might have been 96 when Mike and Roger reopened the place, we started doing Knox and Tri-City, because I think Knox went to Friday nights or something like that at the time. And then Tri-City was Sunday, and then so we did them too, and then I want to say Knox went back to Sunday or something, and we had to choose one then, and so we ended up choosing Tri-City because I hooked up with Ed Rogers. He built me a car, and I drove for him for a while. I had Chad Sheets and Brad Sheets Sheets brothers were, Chad was pretty much my crew chief back in the late 90s and that. And, his brother built the engines. And so we were working with Ed there for, I don't remember the year when Ed had finally had enough of the racing thing. I think it was around 2002 is when I started and went out on my own.
Chase, do you have any more questions relating to the start of his career? If not, you can move forward with something else. But if you do, go ahead and ask.
The only thing I have about the beginning of your career is kind of touching back on getting started is how much harder do you think it was getting started than, say, like Jake, not having the resources like go-karts or even like iRacing even, not having those other resources to use?
Yeah, there was no resources when I started. It was, we built the car, you run down, you get out of the track, get out there for hot laps, get out there for the heat race. There was no learning like go-karts nowadays. These young kids have raced go-karts. Well, I know it's not the same as a big car, but they can learn the G-forces, they can learn their lifting points, and that transfers into from a go-kart to every car you drive, that stuff. Where like I had to just learn that stuff on my own. Many of us older guys did. We just had to figure it out. I mean, I, like many, at first sucked, and but I wanted it. There was nothing I wanted more. Was I wanted to be good, and I made it happen, and I've been fortunate to have a pretty good career, one I'm very happy with.
Well, before we get to some of the other stuff, you've been racing for like how many years in total is it now that you've been racing?
I say 31 because I don't
Okay.
count. I don't really count 94 because I only raced a couple races at the end.
I see.
So, but you could say 32 years.
I see. So in 32 years of experience, you've raced a bunch of tracks. What I mean, probably wouldn't be shocked if we know the answer to this already, but in all the tracks you've raced forever, what's your favorite track that you've ever turned laps at?
I would say the track I liked the most was Volunteer Speedway in Tennessee, Bulls Gap.
Oh,
We went down there with the late model, that fast track world championship deal, and we went down there on Thursday to practice, and then the show was Friday and Saturday. We ended up making both shows. We did really well with that race, made both features. But that was the first time I had ever seen a racetrack out of this area, out of PA, and I could not believe the banking and the type of clay it was. It was amazing. And then just racing on a track with that type of banking, it just awed me, and I'll just never forget that. Around here, racetracks that I enjoy. I enjoy every racetrack I go to. There's certain types of racetracks I don't like. Like, I can't stand a rough racetrack. I can't stand I think racing is better when the track is smooth, even if that means it has to be a little slick. But I won't say bad about any racetrack because I love them all, because I love racing.
yeah. Chase, what do you have to transition off of?
I don't know if there is a transition off of that. That was definitely an answer I wasn't expecting.
I was expecting Tri-City, honestly.
I was expecting Tri-City, Knox, or Sharon. Those were the three that I was down to. But
if you're
would
talking,
you be interested in a Penn Ohio race at a Volunteer?
yeah, that's quite a ways. That would pay pretty good. But as far as local racetracks, if I had to, like, ones that I race at constantly, of course I'm going to say Tri-City because it's it's 15 minutes away. But I like Mercer. I love Sharon. Sharon is a very technical track. That's why we like it. It's real technical. I love Knox, obviously, because that's where my roots are. That's where I learned how to race. I've been to Silver Springs before they closed. I've been to Cannonball Speedway. I don't even remember where the hell that was. But I've been down there. I've been Skyline Speedway. We used to look at the end of the year when racing around here was over with. We used to get that area auto racing. So we used to look in there at the ads, and we'd find a big stock car race, and we'd go because we didn't want to be done racing yet. So we'd go to them tracks like I just mentioned.
Yeah. Well,
I guess I have a good transition. I guess this would be a good time for it. Speaking of all the tracks we're mentioning, when is Jake gonna get to leave Tri-City?
Jake will get to leave Tri-City when we get a little more help and finances to do so.
Everybody listening, there you go.
Huh?
Said everybody listening, there you go.
Yeah. Right now, the '07 car is a car that I had ran before. Before I'm, it's the car before I'm running now, and we kept it around, and it's like a 2014, and so like that, along with a culmination of used parts. Now Jake did put some stuff on it this winter to freshen it up, the front end and that, but you know what, that '07 team right now is on a shoestring budget, and Dad still races, so, and I don't want to be done yet, and so I want to keep them racing. And I think the best thing I could do to do that right now would be to keep them local, keep them on the racetrack. If I start hauling them all over the place, I'm just afraid that without backing or something, that something drastic could happen, and I wouldn't be able, it could end the season or something like that.
Yeah.
Now I understand. I know that people are going to say, well, if you take them to different racetracks, it's going to teach them a lot more. That's absolutely true. The more you go race around, the more you're going to learn. But when you're not racing at all, you're not going to learn nothing.
Yeah. And that's something I want to drive home that point too, if I could comment on this. A wreck for us with the '07 car is probably takes almost double the time to get put back together as it would another person. It's just it's not a B-side car by any means. I'm very lucky to be driving this car and having the opportunity I have. I have a really good situation, but it's hard because, like Dad said, he's still full bore in his career, I'm just getting started. So, it's a different story for us. And don't get me wrong, I would absolutely love to go to some of these other tracks, but taking two race cars to, a track like, Tri-City is one thing because it's our local track, but you start talking about like Sharon, the cost starts to pile up. And then another thing is too, if you get involved in an incident at a place like Sharon, we got this open trailer. We got to haul a wrecked race car home an hour. It's we're just playing it smart right now.
It's not just, I'm going to get you to Sharon at some point here. It's just, I'm just saying, for my point of this deal is for like Jake to be racing as much as I do right now, or to run, it's just not possible financially for us.
Yeah.
That's why we're, the '07 car, we're just setting our own goals right now. Each year we've kind of been doing that, just little bits and pieces at a time. We hit the amount of races we wanted to race last year, and this year we're trying to do a little bit more. So, it is what it is. But, well, I'll go to my next question now. So, what is, out of your 31 years of experience, would you say your greatest accomplishment is?
Like, you mean like one particular race possibly that I won, or like,
anything. When you think about your racing career and there's just one thing that, you're really, really proud of, you'd say a moment, a milestone, something you're proud of the most. What is it?
The thing I'm most proud of is the wins that I have. And I have kept track of my feature wins since I started. I have a board and I keep track of it. We just recently won race number 115 on Friday at Tri-City. I know that's not a lot to some people. There's people that have won many more than that, but also there's people that have not won nearly that many that wish they could have. So I'm very proud of that. Um, I've won multiple championships, but championships, I mean, I never really kept track of them, and we sort of stopped running for points years ago. But that's one thing that I'm really happy about is the wins. Some of the races that I won, back in the day, I was very happy to win 3 Applefest 100s. That was a big deal back at the time. I won 2 Fall Fest events at Challenger Raceway and Little Guy Nationals. I won all the big stuff, but most recently, probably the biggest paying race that I won throughout my career would be that Ed LeBoux Memorial that I won here, 3 years ago, Chase?
Yeah, I think 3 or 4 before this year, I think.
Yeah. That race I wasn't expecting to win, and everything just came together. And that was a very exciting moment for me.
Yeah. I have another thing. Chase, I'm just racking through my questions here, but they all kind of piggyback off of each other. So we talked about your greatest accomplishment. You've been racing a long time. We've driven that, the whole show. We're trying not to make you feel old because obviously
I'm not that old.
Well, no, we're not saying there's guys that are, we're not saying that.
I'm 52 and I still feel good in a race car. Now, the only difference I know, that I can tell you is when you're your age racing and you get to be 52, when you're not in as good a shape, like sometimes I'm more mentally and more physically tired, It's probably why I don't like rough racetracks. But
yeah.
But like my mind still works the same. I mean, I don't feel like there's anybody smarter out there because of my experience. But I feel like, the young guns and that, they may have an advantage, and when it's elbows up and that.
Well, so what I was gonna get to, I'm not trying to offend you anymore.
Oh, I'm not offended.
What do you still want to accomplish? I mean, you've done a lot. I mean, there's certainly, you could go down the list of things you've accomplished in the sport, but what do you still want to do?
I just pretty much want to, I want to keep winning. I mean, everything, my whole career, my life and everything it's been based off of winning. And winning is a good thing, but it sucks when you don't win and you're disappointed that you didn't win. And so it's sort of a double-edged sword, but I just want to stay competitive, keep winning, and I want to win some more big shows. I mean, I wanted to win that 10,000 to win race so bad, and I was so close that one year. And that would have been a major goal, if they still had that race.
Yeah. Chase, now that I've asked like my 7 questions in a row, you can ask some of yours now.
One of my questions we haven't got to yet is kind of an important question based on the banner that you can see going across the bottom here is, what's the story behind the nickname, the Seneca Slider?
So Joe Brenner was the announcer down at Sportsman Speedway at Knox, and I don't know what year it was, probably like 1998, 99, somewhere in there. All of a sudden, one night out of the blue, he started calling me Seneca Slider. Obviously Seneca, because I'm from Seneca. and then I don't know where he got Slider. And then that was, like I said, that was the year that Knox raced Friday nights. And then all of a sudden I go to Tri-City on Sunday, and Walt Weimer picked it up. So, and it just sort of, I don't know, it didn't go away. So
Yeah.
we just rolled with it.
Yeah. Chase, do you have anything else?
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of that. You and your brother started building chassis, slider race cars. When did you guys start that?
I started building cars around 2002, and I don't do it as a full-time job. I do it as a hobby, and so like I do like 1 or 2 a year, maybe 3 in the off season, just to help out with the with the racing funds. And it's sort of escalated as, especially the last 10 years, we built a bunch of them, more than we did at the beginning. But yeah, it's something I like to do. I mean, I like it. Chassis work is fun to me. It's like art. It's like you got to use your mind a lot for strength points and that. And I really enjoy doing that type of thing.
Something that actually Chase just kind of briefly touched on. This is kind of straying away a little bit from the slider race cars chassis side of things, but we can get back to that. Something I wanted to bring up. You've had over your years, you've had, your guys that you've considered, your crew chiefs and stuff. But Chase mentioned Brad, and I was curious. Brad, he's very smart, and he's very, very tactical and wise when it comes to what these cars are doing and stuff like that. How important would you say, and how much of an impact has Brad had in your career, helping you and stuff, and being the mind behind the driver?
Well, things got crazy in around 2008, 9, when shocks started becoming more a factor, when everything started changing. And I was old school. I'm an old school driver. I started in the 90s, and that I was used to doing things one way or making minimal changes. Well, times change in racing. Everything evolves, and setups evolved. And Brad was into the evolving setups, and it took him a while to get me to change. But finally I said, you know what? I said, you can deal with all that stuff. I'll just get in there and drive it. And ever since then, I've been letting him, I still have input, obviously, but Brad knows how I drive, and we've learned to communicate really well together as far as, setup and that goes. And so he's been a big part of it. And I definitely, wouldn't be able to do it without him. And I'm appreciative to be able to have my brother, by my side, at the racetrack.
Yeah. And gonna stray away from that a little bit again. So you've raced, if I can recall correctly, you've raced, the stock cars, you've raced the Rush late model. It was different, when you did it. But and then you've raced a modified, and I'm probably missing something, different classes as the years have went on, but from your perspective, what class, that would you say you've had the most fun racing in? It's like just driving wise, like the cars,
I mean, I've been racing the stock cars back in the day. They were more like a pure stock type deal. And then I've raced the pro stocks, and nowadays I've raced an E-mod for 1 year. It was really fun. And then the crate late. And the class that I mostly enjoy driving in is the pro stocks, what we're doing right now. Sure, if I had the opportunity to do a super late model, absolutely, I would do that. But as far as them three divisions that I have driven, I would say the pro stocks. The crate late model deal wasn't my deal. We tried. We had good stuff. We had a new 2012 rocket. We had a 2013. We had good stuff, but I could not. I had a hard time adapting to the crate motor lifestyle of momentum and the money I was spending to gain, to try to gain 200ths of a second just to get a little bit faster. And we tried and tried and tried, and I did win a race in it,
Yeah.
But it just turned into being more frustrating than fun to me. I knew I was a good driver, and I wanted to win, and I wasn't getting them results. So I just decided it wasn't for me.
Well, I mean, especially, by the time you got around to racing, a crate late model, you had already had a ton of years in, the stocks and stuff. So it's like by the time you get around to that style of racing, I mean, you almost have to change your entire driving style in order to feel competitive in a division like that.
Right. Well, there's an old saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, I was an old dog that had raced all that other stuff, and then I just could not change my ways the way I wanted to do it. I'm a finesse driver. I mean, I want to be able to use my foot coming off the corner to gain traction and not spin the tires. That's what I've done all my life. But I could never, in the crate car, I just could never, because they don't spin the tires barely. It's more momentum. And I just could not figure that deal out. We had some good runs, don't get me wrong. But
when you guys moved to the crate lates, what were you trying? Were you guys just trying to do something different, or did you have a specific goal in mind?
no, we had always wanted to get a late model. That's what I wanted to do. And we thought, well, if we can't do a super late model, let's do a crate. And but if I would have had my choice, I would have had a 430 aluminum motor back then, a Drain, or or Mount Hewitt was popular back then. I would have had one of them in a late model, and seen more of my career. I would have been good in a super late model with all that horsepower, but I just never got that opportunity.
Well, you never know. Maybe people will see this podcast and you'll get a crack at a super late. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Crazier things have happened.
If you got a phone call and someone wanted you to just come, you're gonna come test this super late, you can run a race. Would you do it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've been in one before. Daryl Bozzard let me. Him and his dad let me, after Tri-City one night, run theirs for about 10 laps, and I had good lap times in it. Yeah, it's nothing. It's just a race car.
Yeah.
The big thing with the late model deal is you got to have the backing, and you got to have smart people around you, because their setups are, they're into, they don't scale their cars anymore. They're into loads, and spring loads, and shock loads, and all this, and it's very complicated, which I'm really not into that stuff. That's what Brad's for. So
yeah.
But I have to be able to tell him what I feel, and but yeah, I would definitely do it if I ever could. But um, I'd rather see you get the opportunity when you do something like that when when you're out of school and I'm finally retired, because I don't want to quit going to the racetrack. My when I'm not able to drive anymore.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, I wouldn't turn something like that down. That'd be pretty cool. But Mr. Grimm, go ahead with another question of yours.
One of my last questions is Jake actually wanted me to ask this question. Would you call yourself more of a high side hero or a catfish?
I mean, I would say more of a catfish right now, because I don't. But like I don't like to run the top at Sharon because I don't know. I think it's because of the guardrail. But like I will go to the top if I have to. I mean, but preferably, the bottom's the shortest way around the racetrack, so that can't be argued.
That's true.
Yeah, very true. I mean, now, well, you've had your moments in like the past couple of years though, where you've won some races on the top. I mean, because of your driving style and you clinging to the bottom and you like the bottom and stuff. When you have success on the top, is it that much more bittersweet? I mean, is it a lot more enjoyable or?
Whatever it takes. If I go to the top, it's because the bottom I've tried and tried and tried and it is not working. So I'm going to do something different. And if I went up there and it worked,
Yeah.
My top's different than most people top. I only go 3/4 of the way up, not the whole way.
Not to the Chris McGuire line.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my last question, we've asked, I think, almost every driver this, and I don't know how you're going to react to this one. It's getting spicy. But
are you going to ask me where I met my wife at?
No. No. Oh goodness. So what we do is very intense. Okay.
Okay.
We all get, it's very easy to get pissed off at somebody, right? So I've heard stories over the years, okay? And some don't just belong on the internet, when it comes to people getting mad at other drivers. But what happens when someone makes you mad is that next week you want to go out and you want to beat them in a race. So over your years, all the tracks you've raced, have you ever had like a rival, someone that you wanted to beat week in and week out?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's changed throughout the years. But one of my first rivals I ever had was Matt Lux at Tri-City. Me and him would duke it out. And, all summer long we would duke it out. And even at Knox sometimes when we'd both show up there. But me and him had some real good racing through back in the day. But other than that, there was Matt and then me and Bobby Powell. We were more friends, but of course we wanted to beat each other. He was my teacher, and so I obviously wanted to beat him. But nowadays, though, I mean, obviously everybody is gunning for Chris Schneider. Chris is the best pro stock driver out there. And so, like, the reason, I mean, I'll speak for our team. The reason why we still love this sport so much is because there's a challenge in front of us. And that challenge is Chris Schneider. Now, we haven't been able to do it yet, but that could change someday. That's what challenges are. So he's probably the rival of today, you know.
Yeah. And when we ask that question, I kind of emphasize this too. That's not a stir the pot question at all. I think that
I'm not,
I
no.
think that rivalries are absolutely detrimental to the development and to any driver. Like from my, little end of experience in go-kart racing, week in and week out, you had, we'd unload and you knew who you were going to be racing against and you knew who you had to beat on a certain night. And that raises, if you want to be out there and you want to win, it raises you to another level because you have to be on your A game in order to beat that, individual. And that makes teams better. That makes drivers better. So I think that's, very important. But every time I ask that question, I give it this
Yeah,
massive.
I think a rival isn't a rival doesn't have to be someone that you dislike, or a rival is someone that does the same thing that you do, that you want to beat because they've been winning. You got to beat them now. It's that. It's not, obviously there's other types of rivals maybe but I'm not going to get into that.
Yeah, we're stepping on pins and needles. Well, Chase, that was my last question. So, what do you got to kind of close us out here?
All I got left is Bobby. Just anyone you want to thank, just go ahead and give them a shout out. Now's the time.
Okay, well, so I want to thank my wife, Chrissy. I met her at the racetrack and in the pits there, so we hooked up, and then we ended up getting married and having Jake here, and so we did that. But other than that, I just want to thank all the people in my career that sort of helped me get going. One of the first ones was Brad Sheets. I mentioned about Brad and Chad earlier in the podcast. Right when I first started racing, he was a drag racer, and the Sheetses were our neighbors on Egypt Road, and he instantly got involved and took care of all my motor building and that, and then me and Chad were pals. We were the same age, so Chad was very into the cars and stuff, and so them two were a big part of it. And then Ed Rogers and Maggie Rogers, they housed me for 4 or 5 years maybe, and that really gave me the opportunity to have good equipment and to actually showcase what I could do better. So them, and then through my career we've had so many people that have come and gone, and that we've lost that we'll never forget about either. Dean Sheets, which was Chad and Brad's father, Jim Heater, Don Slagle, Eric, and I know I'm forgetting some, but them people will never forget. And just the sponsors I've had throughout the years, I want to thank them. My current sponsors, Virgil Iron and Steel, Cranberry Beverage and Seneca here, Shaw Industries, ABL Creations, Perk Up and Seneca, Hoyle's Chop Shop, Bish Heating and Cooling. Did I forget any, Jake?
I don't know.
Them are my current sponsors, and of course I'm going to mention them. So, but I forget somebody.
I don't know. I was gonna look.
Close Racing Supply. Yes, Close Racing Supply. You see, you almost made me forget.
Yeah. Well,
you kids are, I think you guys are doing a good job at this. As racing season gets going here, I'm going to try to get you some bigger guests here. And I think if you keep doing this, I think in the summer here, I think what you guys had mentioned earlier about getting the video released earlier in the week, I think you'll get more views that way.
yeah.
Because if you by releasing it on Friday during racing season, well, most people, weather permitting, they're at the racetrack in the week.
Right.
So I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, and like we said at the start of the show, I mean, we're still experimenting. We are 7 weeks into this podcasting deal, and it's really experimental because I mean, there's not a lot of podcasts that came before us for this stuff like this in our area. So, we're playing it by ear, but we're happy to, keep doing this. And yeah, we're trying to get some stuff planned, try to set some stuff up down the line. But I'll kind of close it out here. Thanks for coming on. It was bound to happen at some point. One thing I haven't mentioned yet, we're, some point down the line, we'll probably have, guests that we've already had come back on. So I'm sure it probably won't be the last time we have you on the show as long as we keep it going. So, but thanks for coming on. It was cool talking. So far out of all of our guests, we've had you and we've had Buckley, Cotelis, and Easler. So you were our, did I forget somebody? Braden. You forgot about Braden, but you were our, I would say our guest that we've had so far that has the most experience. So it was pretty cool hearing some stories. From how you got your teeth carved, stuff like that.
Andy's got some experience too. But
well, yeah.
He's probably, I don't know when he started, but
yeah, we're going to have Andy back on at some point. Absolutely. But, well, thanks for coming on. This has been Lickin' the Dirt, episode 7. We thank everybody for watching. Thanks for giving us motivation to keep this going. And like we said at the start, keep us informed on what you think we should do, if we think we should try some different stuff, different release dates, if we should do it super early in the week. I don't know. We're open to anything. We're not experts. We are ignorant to this stuff. But thank you for watching, and we'll catch you guys next Thursday.
Licking the dirt means when you're leaning in your go-kart and you're almost touching your head on the ground.